Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari. And today I want to tell you about a very important concept and yoga brings, like a vision that yoga gives for you to understand why it's so important to control and observe your mind and not let the lower influences take over. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that there are three portals to hell, very dramatic kind of a structure. And he says these three portals to hell, they are greed, anger, and kama, which we can translate as an immoral desire. So these three portals to hell. And you say like, oh yeah, sure, lots of religious books, they always say these things. They always list these sins and say they're so terrible. But like I had a person write to me and said, why shouldn't I sin? What's wrong with doing bad things? This is a very good question. What's wrong with doing bad things, with sinning? What's so bad about sinning? It looks nice enough for some people. What's so wrong about it? Why should I not sin? Good question. And this is why though. So yoga gives you this explanation. What happens is, when you take these three gates to hell, we talk about anger, talk about like lust, you talk about greed, what happens is these things grow and take over your mind. Imagine your mind as like a space, like a physical space, because it's kind of what way it works. You have like your mind, your conscious, there's like this amount of space, you have this amount of mind, and your mind can take, like what's occupying your mind, like what's in your mind. And you can have things that grow to such proportions within your mind that they kick everything else out. That's the way it works, right? You can be so focused on work, for example, that you kind of forget about family and taking care of your health. That's the way it works. That's the way the mind works. It's like if you don't observe what's going on and you don't choose well, some things can grow out of proportion and kind of take over your mind. Now, the problem with sin, the problem with specifically these mentioned by Krishna, anger, greed, and just immoral desire in general of any kind, is that they take over the mind very easily. I mean, at least anger, I'm sure you've experienced before, right? You've gotten angry and you've seen what happens when you get really angry. You forget everything else. In Krishna's own words, you lose your intelligence, right? You've gotten angry to the point where you weren't thinking rationally. You do stupid things, you punch walls, you like break your phone, you do stupid things because there's no more room for intelligent thought. There's no more room for reason. So these things grow so much, they grow very quickly and very easily. So anger, greed, lust, these things can grow so quickly out of proportion that they kick out from your mind your very self. They kick out your self-control. So your ability to determine what's best gets pushed out. There's no longer space in your mind for that. There's no longer space in your mind for considering what your purpose is, your dharmas. So dharma gets kicked out, your purpose-led life gets discarded because now this desire, greed, this anger, this thing now is in charge. You've lost control, and that's why people do horrific, horrible, stupid things when they're led by greed, lust, anger, etc. People do really horrible, stupid things because their power to analyze, their power to decide, to think rationally gets diminished by the degree of that anger, greed, and lust. The more you have of that, the less reason, the less of your own self is there to decide. And here is a very important point you have to understand. If you're no longer in control, now let's say lust or anger or greed are in control. Now if somebody can control your anger, lust, or greed, then they can control you. And that's how the world works. That's how political campaigns, marketing campaigns, all tricks of all sorts, criminals act. They can control your greed, control your lust, control your anger. I mean, take, for example, lust. It's so easy. It's called the honey trap. It's a classic thing. You get some beautiful woman to convince a guy, and he'll do something stupid. He'll betray his country, his company, his family. He'll give away his wealth. I mean, these people, there's these con artists that do this always. There will always be, and there always are. All these con artists using lust to steal from people. What about greed? Greed is the most common way to steal money from people. You convince them they're going to make money, and then of course you steal their money. So con artists love using greed. It's very easy to control someone with greed. So much marketing, so many ads you'll see where they're trying to manipulate your greed, selling you courses of how to make money with the stock market and this and cryptocurrency and this meme coin. It's just like they're using the greed to control you. And what about anger? Anger is like the number one thing politicians like to use throughout history, always. They're always doing it. Right now, it's like hugely in fashion in the world. Everybody's using it all over the world. They use anger. So they're like, yes, anger, and they activate and cultivate your anger, because the more anger you have, the more they control you, because they're controlling your anger. That's the way you get controlled. That's the way you get manipulated. Through anger, through greed, through lust, you get manipulated because you're no longer in charge. The anger is in charge, and whoever controls the anger is in charge of you. The lust is in charge. Whoever controls the lust is in charge of you. So that's why we have to be very careful. We have to use these yoga techniques. We have to control our minds. This whole yogic path, the 3T path, Bhagavad Gita, it's all about you developing mental power. You have to be in charge of your mind. You have to be in charge of your life. And then you have to guide your life, and then you can learn. The best thing for me is to guide my life according to purpose, to guide my life. So you can learn, and then you can decide upon what the best course for your life is, a life of dharma, a life of bhakti, of devotion, of contact with God. You can decide these things because you are now back in control. And you have to be very careful when you see lust arising, when you see anger arising, when you see greed arising. You have to be very aware. Oh no, if I don't check this now, it will take over my mind and I will lose myself. I'll go down this portal to hell. So let me know if you understood these points. Very important points, very important guidelines from Bhagavad Gita for us to not be controlled and manipulated by others and not destroy our own lives. So that's it for now. Have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.